Good day and welcome to another edition of the Military and Foreign Affairs Network. I'm your host, the voice of reason. So in today's coverage of the ongoing civil war that is taking place inside of the former state of civil war, we're going to look at the most heaviest fighting and where it's occurring, and any advances that either side has currently made as of today. So we're going to start along the southeastern frontal zone as the Tigrayan Defense Forces continue to push towards the town of Desai. We have received reports, we have received video evidence that would indicate that the TDF is on the outskirts of Desai. We've even heard reports in certain cases that the units, advanced reconnaissance units of the TDF have actually entered the town of Desai. Now, I would have to say I'm going to have to take that with a grain of salt. I would say that that at this point is unlikely, and I'll try to explain. So Desai, a very large town, probably would be one of the largest towns or cities that the Tigrayan Defense Forces has taken as of yet. If it takes Desai, there is a tremendous amount of Ethiopian Amharan forces, and again, those two are starting to blur the lines in terms of an Amhara nationalist paramilitary organization calling itself an army versus the Ethiopian state military, which again, the two are starting to become a bit confused. But again, we can confirm there are large amounts of forces of the Ethiopian / Amhara military inside of Desai. That includes tanks, armored fighting vehicles, heavy artillery, and a very large amount of forces, probably in excess of 10,000 personnel between Desai and Kombolcha and operating in the Kombolcha Gap. But furthermore, the advances into Desai could be incredibly challenging, and I'll try to zoom in where all the folks can see what we're looking at. So obviously we have some fairly sizable terrain features on the outside of the city. Obviously, if you approach from the northeast, again, it kind of sets on a plateau with a very large, challenging terrain feature in terms of mountains and hills and this plateau to overcome that could be used as defensive positions for the Amhara paramilitaries. But again, I'm just going up and around the city where you can see again more terrain features that can be utilized as defensive positions on the outskirts of the city. Some of these are fairly well foliaged to provide cover and concealment for defensive positions. A little bit different than some of the terrain features further north and in the Tigray region itself. But again, just to see the type of challenge that the Tigrayan Defense Forces would have to overcome in order to physically attack the city. Now, that's not to say they could start to utilize artillery strikes to bombard the city and encourage the city to capitulate. That is a possibility. And given the size of the city and the traditional nature of conflict, that could at some point occur. We do know that ultimatums have been sent to Desai in terms of those forces to vacate Desai and its defensive positions around Desai. But I would have to say that is incredibly unlikely given the amount of forces of the Ethiopian army that are currently in Desai and the amount of time that they have had to put up defensive barriers in the vicinity of Desai as well. So again, we do know the TDF is operating very close to Desai. It is probably looking to envelop Desai now. I would say that doing so would be also incredibly challenging because of the sister city to the east, which is Kombolcha. And again, very, very significant town. If you were to just envelop Desai from the east, obviously you would be facing possible attack from the town of Kombolcha, which is very close. So you would have to see the Tigrayan Defense Forces almost envelop both Kombolcha and Desai in order to besiege the town. But again, that would take a tremendous amount of manpower, and at the same time, we do know there are significant forces of the Ethiopian / Amhara nationalist forces inside of this area. So again, we'll continue to monitor the situation and keep an eye on it and see what happens. But that's the from our understanding that is where the situation sits at this time. Now that could change again. We're seeing tremendous momentum swings in this conflict. So, is it possible that we could see some sort of infighting take place and a possible withdrawal of forces from Desai Kombolcha? Yeah, it is possible, but I would say at this point it is unlikely. I would say that there is going to be a fairly significant fight for these two cities at some point, if it comes to that. Further in the central front, we continue to hear that the Tigrayan Defense Forces continue to infiltrate deeper into Waktina in this area here and take control of towns in significant passes and control of some of the dry riverbeds that exist in this area as well. The fighting also continues west of Gashina, as we are continuing to see the Amhara militaries and the Ethiopian military attempt to press along the B-22 highway back towards what I would define as kind of the Gashina Gap and look to try and make another move on Gashina. But we're hearing conflicting reports in terms of who controls this town right here, Falakit. Is it the TDF? Is it the Amhara Regional Forces? We've seen some video evidence that would indicate that elements of Amhara paramilitaries have moved into the town of Falakit. But again, same thing. You really have to take it with a grain of salt in terms of what is occurring and what may not be occurring there as well. But we anticipate further fighting will take place in the vicinity of Gashina and west of Gashina. And then finally, near Gander, north of Gander, and in the vicinity of Gander, we continue to see large numbers of Tigrayan Defense Force personnel make moves towards the city of Gander. We're not seeing traditional front lines. The conflict, again, is very fluid. We could have in cases where you could see the city of Debark being controlled by the Amhara militias, where then you could see the city of Dabat and other areas being controlled by the Tigrayan Defense Forces. But we do know that the Tigrayan Defense Forces are using a strategy of moving, are not utilizing main roadways such as B30. In some cases they are, in many cases they are. But in many cases they are also circumventing these large roadways and traveling across really great spaces of terrain features and unpopulated areas to attack a target from the rear. And we are seeing that, and we're seeing video documentation of these forces moving over land, not utilizing roadways to infiltrate areas deep in the Amhara region. And I believe we'll continue to see that tactic take place. Again, it's almost a conventional conflict, but at the same time, heavy elements of a guerrilla conflict in which the Tigrayan Defense Forces are attempting to operate deep into the rear of enemy lines and attack enemy positions. We're also hearing reports that the Oromo Liberation Army continues to make headway and has possibly entered areas of the Amhara region itself. Now, we do know Amhara militias have obviously entered the Oromo region, the Oromia region, and we would anticipate that the Oromo Liberation Army in kind would also enter the Amhara region at some point. And first indications of that happening are being reported. So could the Oromo Liberation Army attempting to be moving north in efforts to possibly move towards Desai in some manner to possibly hook up with Tigrayan Defense Forces personnel? I would say it's possible. We could see that happen. We'll have to wait and see. Again, we are seeing obviously the OLA also operates not in a traditional conventional method at times, so we are seeing those forces as well operate outside of traditional transport methods in terms of following roadways and utilizing open terrain to circumvent and get behind the enemy's rear and to infiltrate areas of the enemy's territory, such as the Amhara region, and I believe we're starting to see that as we speak. But again, the Oromo region is quite literally in utter chaos. I mean, there's elements of the Oromo people who support the former Ethiopian government and federalist forces, and to some extent, it would even appear the Amhara region. And then we also see, to great extent, where we see a significant portion of the Oromo population against these forces, the federal state forces and the Amhara regional forces as well. But that fight continues, and it is really a chaotic situation outside of Addis Ababa and many of these towns inside the Oromo region. But again, that's where we set at the current moment. We'll continue to report on any updates and events that may occur. Again, rather interesting situation near Desai is occurring, as is the situation very fluid in the northwestern area of operations just north of Gander. Have a great day, everybody.